Hey everybody. Lately in class we've been spending a lot of time working on adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. Today we're going to focus on multiplication. And to start, we're only going to focus on multiplying integers, so only multiplying positive and negative whole numbers. We're going to leave fractions and decimals for tomorrow. We're going to start with the rules for multiplying integers. Just like when we add or subtract, one of the first things we want to know is the sign of the answer. Is my answer going to be positive or negative? When we have the same signs, the answer will always be positive. So 4 times 2 gives us 8. Negative 4 times negative 2 gives us positive 8. A negative times a negative is always going to give us a positive. Now this only applies to multiplication and addition. This rule, 2 negatives make a positive, a lot of people like to say that when they're doing addition and subtraction, but it's not always true. It only works when we're multiplying and dividing. When we have different signs, the answer is going to be negative. 4 times negative 2 gives us negative 8. Negative 4 times 2 gives us negative 8. Okay? Same answer, even though the different numbers are negative, because we only have one negative sign in the problem. And then, of course, if we multiply by 0, we get 0. Anything times 0 gives us 0 every time. Let's take a look at 3 quick examples here. In example A, we have negative 5 times negative 7. Now, because I have 2 negative signs, my signs are the same, a negative times a negative, I know my answer is going to be positive. And because positive 5 times positive 7 gives me 35, I know negative 5 times negative 7 is going to give me 35. Same thing with example B here. We want to know, is my answer going to be positive or negative? I'm multiplying negative by a positive. I have different signs. So if we go by our rule up here, I know my answer has to be negative. Okay? And my answer is negative 16 because 8 times 2 is 16. For example C, we have negative 12 times 0. In this case, it doesn't matter what the 12 is. If I have anything times 0, I'm going to get 0 every time. Okay, now that we've worked on multiplying just regular integers, let's see what happens when we involve some actual algebra here, when we're working with some variables. For example, A here we have evaluate a squared when a equals negative 3. Now, if we know a equals negative 3, we can substitute that into this expression, a squared. Instead of that a squared, I'm going to put negative 3 squared. And I'm going to put a parenthesis around that negative 3 when I substitute. This is really important to do when we're working with exponents, okay? So now I have negative 3 to the second power, and I can change that. I can rewrite that, knowing what an exponent is. Negative 3 to the second power means negative 3 times negative 3. Now I can do my multiplication. I have a negative times a negative, so I know my answer is going to be positive. And 3 times 3 gives me 9, so my answer is positive 9. In example B, I want to evaluate x, y, z. Now that means multiplication when the variables are right next to each other. X times y times z when x is 2, y is negative 4, and z is 6. So I can rewrite that as 2 times negative 4 times 6. Now, when we have multiple instances of multiplication in the same problem, we just work from left to right. I can do 2 times negative 4. Now I know 2 times negative 4, that's going to give me a negative number. And 2 times 4 is 8, so that's negative 8 times 6. Now here again, I have a negative times a positive. The signs are different, so I know my answer is going to be negative. My answer is going to be negative 48, because 6 times 8 is 48, and I have to make it negative because my signs are different. All right, those are pretty quick. Let's try one more example. Let's just say example C here. And let's see what happens when we have m times n squared, and we'll say that m is 5, and we'll say n equals -8. We're going to do the first step the same way we did in these last couple problems. We're going to substitute m equals 5, and n is -8 to the second power. Now we know from order of operations, if you remember PEMDAS, that exponents always comes before multiplication. So I can take care of this exponent here. Remember, that means -8 times -8, and negative times a negative is going to give me a positive answer, and I know that 8 times 8 is 64. So this is going to become 5 times 64. Positive 5 times positive 64. My signs are the same. I know my answer is going to be positive, and I just have to calculate 64 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. I carry the 2. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 2. 64 times 5 is 320, and my answer is positive. And there we go. There's our answer. All right, that's it for tonight. Make sure you write your questions and you write a good summary and an extension question, and then make sure you submit your notes. People are still forgetting to do that, so please submit your notes. Have a good night. I will see you in class tomorrow.